the 10 deadliest pickup trucks ever built. Today, we're exposing the most lethal vehicles to ever wear a tailgate. The pickup trucks that were simply too unstable, too powerful, or too fragile for the road. These machines combined excessive performance with zero safety features, demanding total commitment from the driver. If you missed a step, they punished you severely, risking catastrophic failure, spinouts, or rollovers. Prepare for the 10 deadliest pickup trucks ever built. 10. Early Ford Ranger, 1983 to 1992. Kicking off the list is a truck that was deadly not because of massive power, but because of massive fragility, the early Ford Ranger. These compact trucks, especially the single-cab versions of the 1980s, were designed when safety regulations were minimal, and the compact truck segment prioritized utility over occupant protection. The danger was structural. The body-on-frame steel chassis offered almost no crumple zone, meaning any significant frontal or side impact resulted in immediate, catastrophic intrusion into the tiny cab. There were no airbags, and the primitive seatbelts were often the only thing keeping the driver inside the collapsing structure. Furthermore, these trucks were incredibly lightweight, making them highly susceptible to being launched or flipped in collisions with larger, heavier vehicles, which became commonplace on 90s highways. This truck was lethal purely by design and material. The typical engine was the modest 2.3-liter inline four-cylinder or the 2.9-liter V6, producing around 75 to 140 horsepower and up to 170 pound-feet of torque. Performance was never the issue. Survival was. The Ranger had an extremely light curb weight, often dipping below 1,250 kilograms. This combination of high center of gravity, narrow track width, and low curb weight meant that rapid maneuvers could easily lead to rollover, compounding the poor crashworthiness. The minimal size and lack of modern safety engineering truly earned this truck its deadly reputation in the hands of everyday drivers, who often assumed it offered the safety of a full-size vehicle when it offered nothing of the sort. That compact truck was fragile. Now let's look at the ancient brute that was deadly because its technology was stuck in World War II. 9. Dodge Power Wagon, original 1945 to 1968. The original Dodge Power Wagon was a revolutionary 4x4 machine derived directly from World War II military trucks, but on public roads, it was an absolute menace. This truck was deadly not because of speed, but because of its archaic technology combined with brute, unstoppable force. Picture trying to stop nearly 3 tons of rigid steel using drum brakes designed before the jet age. That's the Power Wagon experience. The sheer mass and the primitive braking system meant stopping distances were measured in football fields, making high-speed highway travel a roll of the dice. Furthermore, the immense size, narrow cab, and lack of power steering meant turning the wheel was a full-body workout, especially when you consider its lethally high center of gravity and primitive, non-damped suspension, making high-speed cornering a guaranteed rollover. The engine was the original 230 cubic inch, 3.8 liters, flathead inline 6-cylinder, producing a massive 100 horsepower and around 185 pound-feet of torque. The true danger was its bulk. The truck featured heavy-duty steel body-on-frame construction, resulting in an operational weight that could exceed 3,950 kilograms GVWR. Its deadly traits, the slow speed and immense stopping distances, were simply accepted limitations of military-grade engineering from the 1940s. Driving one today requires the constant awareness that you are operating a slow, heavy, iron-age machine in a world of modern brakes and safety cages, making even a slight panic maneuver a severe risk. From antique hazards, we jump to the modern monster that was so wide and heavy, it posed a threat to everyone else on the road. 8. Hummer H1. The Hummer H1 is a true American icon, but its military DNA made it fundamentally dangerous for civilian streets. The danger here is not just to the occupants, but to everyone else on the road. The sheer width and enormous weight of this vehicle, combined with catastrophic visibility, made it a rolling hazard in urban environments. The massive central tunnel housing the drivetrain components and the wide A-pillars created huge lethal blind spots that could easily hide smaller cars, cyclists, and even entire traffic lanes. Maneuvering the H1 in a parking lot or a congested lane was a constant struggle for situational awareness, often leading to tragic low-speed accidents where the driver simply could not see what they hit. The most common engine was the 6.5-liter turbo diesel V8, later the Duramax 6.6-liter V8 turbo diesel, producing up to 300 horsepower and 520 pound-feet of torque. This was necessary to move the enormous aircraft aluminum/steel chassis, which resulted in a massive curb weight of around 3,500 kilograms. The H1's design prioritized ground clearance and off-road capability over safety. Its independent suspension and high center of gravity, while great for rock crawling, meant sudden avoidance maneuvers at highway speeds were highly prone to rollover, despite its low stance. The H1 was a vehicle built for war zones, and its uncompromising design made it a menace in the suburbs. That heavy monster was dangerous to others. Let's look at the car-truck hybrid that was so fundamentally flawed, it was condemned by the famous Ralph Nader. 7. Chevrolet Corvair 95 Rampside. The Chevrolet Corvair 95 Rampside pickup is a piece of automotive history, but it's also a rolling time bomb of poor engineering. Its danger stems from its unique, revolutionary rear engine design combined with a notoriously unstable swing-axle rear suspension, a setup famously condemned by Ralph Nader in his book, Unsafe at Any Speed. This primitive suspension, especially when the truck bed was empty or partially loaded, created a massive positive camber change during hard cornering. This sudden shift in weight distribution and geometry caused the rear end to tuck under and instantly snap into uncontrollable oversteer, launching the rear-engine truck into a deadly spin. The handling became completely unpredictable at highway speeds, a nightmare that killed the Corvair line. The engine was the unique and 145 cubic inch, 2.4 liters, flat air-cooled 6-cylinder, or the later 164 cubic inch, 2.7 liters, boxer 6-cylinder, producing a modest 80 to 110 horsepower and 135 pound-feet of torque. The Rampside had a curb weight of around 1,300 kilograms. The danger was entirely centered on the steel body-on-frame design's severe rear weight bias. The engine was directly over the rear wheels, magnifying the swing axle instability. This disastrous flaw was compounded by the fact that drivers often loaded the front bed area unevenly to compensate for the engine, further confusing the already nervous suspension. The Rampside proved that sometimes revolutionary engineering can lead to catastrophic consequences. We've seen archaic handling. Now for the deadly problem that lurked in the chassis of one of the world's most reliable pickups. We're halfway through this lethal list. If the Power Wagon and the Corvair Rampside haven't scared you off, then make sure you hit the like button and subscribe right now. The next 5 trucks, including the Viper V10 Monster, are the fastest and most fragile on this list. 6. Toyota Tacoma, first generation N140/N190. The first generation Toyota Tacoma is often praised as bulletproof, but it harbored a hidden danger that caused catastrophic structural failure, the infamous frame rust issue. This was deadly not because of excessive speed or poor handling, but because the steel frame rails were constructed using a weak anti-corrosion process. Years of exposure to road salt, moisture, and neglect led to the frame literally rotting from the inside out. This issue reached crisis levels, leading to a massive government recall, and in many cases, Toyota simply buying back the trucks because the failure was so widespread and dangerous. Imagine driving on the highway when the rear leaf springs tear through the rusted frame, or worse, the cab separates from the chassis in an accident. That was the very real risk posed by these otherwise reliable trucks. The common engines were the reliable 2.4-liter 2RZFE inline 4-cylinder or the 3.4-liter 5V FEV6, producing up to 190 horsepower and 220 pound-feet of torque. The Tacoma was light, with a curb weight hovering around 1,450 kilograms, and its steel body-on-frame construction was supposed to be its biggest strength. However, the structural failure of the chassis itself became the primary deadly flaw. The lack of integrity meant that in an impact, the energy would not be properly absorbed, or the entire structure could twist and collapse. This forced Toyota to take drastic action, eventually offering to replace the entire frame or buy back trucks built between 1995 and 2004, solidifying the first-gen Tacoma's reputation for having a deadly structural weakness. That structural failure was insidious. Now let's look at the car that was deadly because its brake system couldn't handle its own power. 5. Ford F-150 SVT Lightning, the second-generation Ford F-150 SVT. Lightning was a drag strip king, but its deadly reputation came from attempting to stop its immense mass once it got up to speed. Ford built this truck to go fast, but the brake system was criminally undersized for for the sheer velocity and weight of the machine. This led to severe brake fade after just 1 or 2 hard stops, especially under performance driving conditions. Trying to haul this heavy, high-speed monster down from triple-digit speeds was an exercise in terror, giving the drivers zero confidence in it to slow down effectively. The combination of massive momentum and inadequate stopping power made every high-speed run a gamble, turning the truck's best feature, its straight-line speed, into its greatest hazard. The engine was the 5.4-liter supercharged V8, producing 380 horsepower and a colossal 450 pound-feet of torque. This power was delivered to the rear wheels via a rigid steel ladder frame chassis. The truck was a heavyweight with a curb weight of approximately 2,100 kilograms, while the slam suspension and large anti-roll bars made it corner surprisingly well for a truck. The critical safety flaw remained the thermal management of the brakes, which often failed completely under repeated hard use. The Lightning was a perfect example of performance overwhelming safety engineering, creating a vehicle that could accelerate like a sports car but stop like a semi-truck. That heavy speedster couldn't stop. Now for the pure power monster that combined a massive engine with zero electronic aids. Chevy 454 SS C1500. The Chevy 454 SS was born from a simple, dangerous idea. Take a massive big block V8 and cram it into a lightweight, two-wheel drive, short bed pickup chassis. The result was a vehicle with near zero stability and an instant reputation for recklessness. Its deadly traits were simple: no weight over the rear axle, massive low-end torque, and absolutely no electronic intervention, no traction control, no ABS on early models, and notoriously bad drum brakes. Every stoplight launch was a guaranteed sideways slide, and any application of power mid-corner on a wet road resulted in an instant spin. It was the ultimate raw muscle truck, dangerous precisely because it made everything an uncontrollable spectacle. The engine was the classic 7.4-liter, 454 cubic inch, big block V8, producing 255 horsepower and a brutal 405 pound-feet of torque. This raw power was delivered by a rear-wheel drive setup on a steel body-on-frame chassis. The truck's curb weight was relatively light for its size, around 1,850 kilograms. The short wheelbase and light rear end meant the enormous torque was completely untamed, making the truck notoriously difficult to drive straight under hard acceleration. The 454 SS demanded continuous, skilled throttle modulation. Anything less resulted in the truck swinging sideways, making it one of the most dangerous and unforgiving straight-line performance vehicles of the early 90s. That raw power was untamed. Now for the king of instability, the high-riding SUV that was legally challenged for rolling over. Third, Ford Bronco 2. The Ford Bronco 2 earned its place in history not for its power, but for its frightening propensity to roll over. This small SUV became the target of massive lawsuits and government scrutiny due to its high fatality rate stemming from instability. The danger was inherent in its geometry. The short wheelbase was combined with a high center of gravity and a narrow track width, a lethal recipe for dynamic instability. A sudden lane change, an emergency brake, or even a tight corner at moderate speed could easily initiate a chain reaction where the truck would violently tip, sending the passengers into a terrifying multi-roll accident. It was arguably the single most notorious production vehicle in American history for rollover risk, making it inherently dangerous for the average consumer. The common engine was the 2.9-liter V6, producing a modest 140 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque. The truck's power was irrelevant to its danger. The Bronco 2 had a curb weight of around 1,500 kilograms, built on a stiff, modified steel chassis. Its major flaw was the twin traction beam front suspension, which combined with the high stance to create unpredictable geometry changes under load. Ford ultimately faced hundreds of lawsuits over the rollover issue, and the Bronco 2 was eventually replaced by the wider, more stable Ford Explorer. This small SUV was a structural disaster that taught the entire automotive industry a harsh lesson about physics and safety. We've seen the rollover king. Now for the ultimate power fantasy, a Viper V10 crammed into a two-wheel drive pickup. Number 2, Dodge Ram SRT10. The Dodge Ram SRT10 was the result of a mid-2000s fever dream, built on a simple premise: take the engine from the Viper and drop it directly into a Ram pickup. The result was a spectacularly deadly monster that was completely uncontrollable in the wet and overkill in the dry. The danger was the sheer, brutal excess of V10 power delivered to only the rear wheels, combined with suspension designed for straight-line speed, not agility. The truck had no business handling the power it possessed, resulting in wheel spin in the first 3 gears, frightening torque steer, and a chassis that felt perpetually overwhelmed. It was lethal because it encouraged reckless behavior with the sound and fury of a supercar, but lacked any of the corresponding chassis refinement or electronic nannies. The engine was the ferocious 8.3-liter V10 derived from the Viper, producing an astronomical 500 horsepower and 525 pound-feet of torque. The massive engine contributed to the truck's curb weight of nearly 2,300 kilograms. The steel ladder frame chassis was stiffened and lowered, but the rear-wheel drive system was simply incapable of handling the torque dump without losing traction. The SRT10 was a tire-shredding, fuel-guzzling experiment that was fundamentally dangerous because of the mismatch between its excessive, untamed V10 power and its lack of stability control. It was the ultimate statement of muscle car insanity transplanted into a truck. That Viper V10 was pure chaos. For our #1 spot, let's choose the turbo AWD terror that defied physics until it violently let go. One GMC Cyclone. And finally, we have the #1 deadliest pickup truck, a vehicle so fast and so fundamentally unstable, it was banned from the drag strip for being too quick, the GMC Cyclone. The danger here was pure, unpredictable violence. It looked like a simple GMC S15, but it used a turbocharged V6 and an all-wheel drive system that provided devastating launch control. The truck was notorious for severe turbo lag, followed by a massive immediate punch of boost mid-corner, causing the entire AWD system to fight itself. This sudden torque application could cause the truck to violently snap into oversteer, launching its lightweight body into a spin. It was a technological Frankenstein, lacking ABS or any modern safety feature, making its incredible acceleration a terrifying risk in the hands of all but the most skilled drivers. The engine was the 4.3-liter turbocharged V6, producing 280 horsepower and a massive 350 pound-feet of torque. This was delivered by a complex all-wheel drive system. The truck was incredibly light for its power, with a curb weight of just 1,500 kilograms. The combination of AWD traction and turbo violence allowed it to hit 60 miles per hour in a shocking 4.3 seconds, humiliating Ferraris of the day. However, the system's aggressive nature and lack of electronic correction made it fundamentally deadly at the limit. Too much power in a chassis that lacked the refinement to handle it, earning it the top spot on our list of deadly pickups. And there you have it, the 10 deadliest pickup trucks ever built. These machines were dangerous not just because they were fast, but because they were honest, unforgiving, and demanded respect that most drivers simply didn't give. Which one of these lethal legends, the rollover-prone Bronco 2, the Viper-powered SRT10, or the Turbo Terror Cyclone, would you trust yourself to drive daily? Drop a comment below and tell us which one you think is the true king of danger. If this ride through lethal horsepower history got your heart racing, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more content on the fastest and most unforgiving vehicles ever built.